Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Adair Live. We'll be hosting these every other week, featuring experts from the home building industry to help you better understand the ins and outs of building your dream home on your land. My name's Carrie Montoya. I'm the marketing manager here at Adair. My co-host today is Jay Sowers. If this is your first time joining us, Jay's a part of our leadership team for our sales department, and he's worn many different hats during his time at Adair. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the home building industry, and he will be helping get all of your questions answered today. How's it going, Jay?
It's going very good. Thank you so much for having me back. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Glad to have you here. We did have some technical difficulties 2 weeks ago, so we're making up for that one here today. But today we are going to be talking about choosing the right lot to build your dream home. So we'll be monitoring the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. Tell us where you're building or thinking about building. Tell us what part of the home building process you're in, whatever stage you're in. We'd love to hear from you. We'd also love to answer any questions you have about the land shopping process or any other aspect of the building or building a home. So put those questions in the chat and we will go ahead and get started here. So our main objective today is to help you understand the significance of lot selection. There are many factors to consider when choosing your perfect lot. Some of those include where to look for land, the importance of evaluating your site, and how to finance the land purchase. So that being said, let's dive right in. I'm sure everyone's heard location is number one, right? So the first thing I want to ask you, Jay, is about location. What are some of the important things that our customers or people looking for land in general need to think about when choosing a lot?
Well, generally speaking, I think, the first thing that most families understand is what general area they would like to live in, right? When it comes to, school districts or like you say here, proximity from work, et cetera. And I think that, we can get into this further, but when a customer or a family truly understands what their budget is for wanting to potentially build a new home, is we can get with a local licensed realtor and we can do very, very specific searches. And most people may not be aware that we could say, hey, Carrie, let's do this. I'm looking for property that's zoned for residential building, that's no more than 1 acre, and it has all of these other criteria, such as it's less than 170,000, it is in this zip code, it's in this county. And realtors through the regional multiple listing agency, they have a very, very good search engine to be able to really, really dial in the specifics of the lot that you're wanting to potentially buy. But we just have to be careful. The more restricted filters you put on it, the less properties that are available within those criteria. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Different families are going to have different priorities. So making a list of those must-haves can really help you early on in the hunt for land. So specific to our customers, does Adair help with finding the land, or should homeowners have that land locked in before they reach out?
No, I would say that Adair, we're one of the builders that definitely wants to dive in and help. So we do not have licensed brokers or realtors on staff. However, what we do have is very good relationships with realtors who, quite frankly, specialize in land acquisition. So for anybody that is, on the call live or watching this video, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can understand your family's wants and needs specific to land and location, and we can absolutely get you in contact with a very, very good agent in your community.
Yes, we love our realtor partners. So on that same note, when somebody does find that lot they just have to have, when should they submit an offer on the land? Where does that fall in the home building process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So generally in the process, Carrie, if we're to look at this at a very high level, is the vast majority of clients that we serve really want to understand, okay, this particular floor plan with this square footage and these amenities, how much is that going to cost to build on this piece of property. That's really what every client really needs to understand or know. And so what we do, we have a process by which we help the family truly understand their budget from a financing perspective, as well as from a physical perspective, meaning this floor plan with these options, upgrades, and features is going to cost approximately this much money. So, Carrie, after you get past the first step of understanding what is fair and reasonable and will your budget work with what you're wanting to accomplish, right? Once we get past that step, which is super simple, the next step is exactly what you just suggested. And that is making an offer on a piece of property that you're thinking about building on. And if you'd like me to talk more about making an offer, it is a super simple process, and I'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. So a lot of families would suggest that, okay, hold on a second, Adair guy. I'm not buying this piece of property. And I mean, it's 160 or whatever $1,000. Like, time out. Like this is scary. I'm not doing this. Okay. Let's take a step back and let me explain. So when a family gets pre-approved for a loan, it's just that. It's a pre-approval. The worst possible case scenario, team, is your pre-approval is going to expire in about 3 months. And you can walk off into the sunset. No harm, no foul. Okay. Working with a builder like Adair to understand your total project cost doesn't cost you anything. The next step in the process when it comes to making an offer on a piece of property, which is like, wait a second, this is scary. Technically speaking, there's no commitment on your part. Let me explain myself. To make an offer on a piece of property is simply this. You put up what some would consider a small earnest money agreement. It's usually dependent on the purchase price of the land. Earnest money agreements can be as small as $500. They can be as high as a couple $1,000s. But what happens ultimately is that money goes into escrow. And now the seller of the land essentially pulls the land off of the marketplace. So that land is no longer for sale, and they literally hold it aside for you, generally for 30 days, which is known as a 30-day feasibility study. Awesome. So now I've paid $1,000 and this property is now off the market, and I have 30 days to decide if I'm going to do this or not. And Carrie, that's where you work directly with your builder to make sure that we visit the job site. We understand if your floor plan is going to work. We contact the building jurisdiction to make sure that does the building jurisdiction allow a building permit for what you want to build on that property, right? Everything from site development right down to your quartz countertops. And at the end of the day, on day 29 of a 30-day feasibility study, you can technically have 3 choices to make. I'm not aware of a fourth. The first choice is, you know what, it's too expensive. I don't feel comfortable. This is not right for me. Okay, perfect. Then you would rescind your offer on the property and you'd get your earnest money back. Remember that $1,000 you put up front to pull it off the market? You get your money back. Okay. A second potential option is, I love this property. I really want to build on this lot, but I'm not done with my feasibility. Like I still have unanswered questions. That's okay. We would get with our realtor and we would just ask for an extension to the feasibility and say, hey, can we please, at no additional cost, right? Can we please get an additional 10 days or an additional 15 days of feasibility? And then that can get signed around. Now you have 15 more days to get those final questions answered. Or here's the scary option, Carrie. Oh my goodness, we're in budget. Everything looks great. All my questions are answered. The lot's perfect. This is exactly what I want to build. Okay. Then we actually accept the offer. We roll past the 30-day feasibility study. And that's when you go into contract with your builder, fund the loan, right? and then the loan pays for the property. So it's a very simple process, and you can absolutely back out if you need to back out prior to the feasibility study being over.
Yes, we understand that commitment can be scary,
Very,
but
very,
we're here to hold your hand through that process.
yeah.
So moving on to the next part is size and orientation. Jay, can you touch on why someone might want a larger or smaller lot and how this decision impacts the floor plan available to them and also the rest of construction?
Absolutely. So if I'm going to exaggerate for a second, some of us want acreage, like big acreage. Like I want 5 acres, 10 acres or more, right? When it comes to that, you know, it's generally not a big deal on finding a really good spot to place your home. Okay. Now, something that you would learn in working with Adair is there are pros and cons. So on those larger properties, and I want my home placed on the back of this acreage property because that's where my best views are, that's fine. But just know that we now have to put in a 900-foot access road. We have to bring power, 900 or 1,000 feet and set a new transformer. So generally speaking, the closer to the main street you are, the less expensive your potential development is, right? All good things to work through. If you're looking at more of a smaller, nice, actually a really nice neighborhood infill lot, well, there's not really much to talk about. That's where the home's got to be placed. There's the lot. There's not a lot of options. But the one thing that, as a builder, that we want to talk to our consumers about is building setbacks and topography. And those are the two things that will impact the customer's decision on the floor plans. So if we stay with a small infill lot, and when I say a small infill lot, I'm talking about maybe like 50 feet wide and 100-foot deep, something like that. The utilities are, generally speaking, right there at the street. So you just pay your connection fees to the utility departments, and here you go. But we have to understand that on a 50-foot wide lot, they generally will have a 5-foot side building setback. So wait a second, what does that mean? Well, that means on a 50-foot wide lot, you can generally only build a 40-foot wide home, right? You can't build a home all the way out to your property lines. And that's one of the many things that a builder that is working directly with you will help identify is your building setbacks. Sometimes the front setbacks are 20 feet. Sometimes they're 25 or 30 feet. It just depends. And then the rear setbacks will have their own. But what that means is that on your property, we now have what's called a building envelope. So even though the property is 50 wide and 100 deep, it may only have a 40-foot wide and 70-foot deep building envelope. Make sense? So that's assuming a flat lot condition. Now, if we start getting topography involved, topography is arguably the one factor in looking for land where it can impact both your floor plan, the orientation of the home, as well as your overall construction cost. So sloped property is going to cost more for your builder to build on because we either have to step the foundation down that hillside or pour taller concrete retaining walls, or in some cases, do daylight basements on very, very steep lots. So for everybody looking for a lot out there you go. For everybody looking for property out there, that is the one thing that can drive cost. Carrie, did you have additional questions around that?
Yeah, it would be amazing if everyone's land was construction ready and there were no challenges to overcome, but obviously that's not generally the case for customers. I think you pretty much covered it. It was just a general overview of terrain and topography. So
Yeah,
got it all in one swoop.
yeah, and I would offer too that when you touched on orientation, one of the great things about engaging a on your lot builder and not necessarily a subdivision builder is the orientation. So let's go out there together and let's look at these potential views. and territorial views. And we can start having conversations on, oh my goodness, let's definitely put the back of the home this way to capture that view. And oh, by the way, my primary suite, I really like the views out that window. But in fact, I want to add a couple windows to my floor plan because I want to be able to capture these views as well. These are all things that are going to be done on site during your feasibility request with a more of a on your lot home builder. So orientation really comes into play, especially on lots where we have some wiggle room to place the floor plan.
Absolutely. The builder should be the expert on that home orientation. So you can get your wish list handled, but also you have their knowledge and expertise in that area.
Yep.
So another aspect of home building that needs to be considered, obviously, are utilities and any existing infrastructure that may be on your land.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do have existing utilities, you're likely already ahead of the game. But Jay, can you touch on what utilities will be needed to add if it's raw land?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I will say that in the years that I've been in the industry, this is the one area that I think that some customers get nervous about and generally overthink it. Okay. But at the end of the day, every property, I promise, well, unless you're off grid, right? Every property needs water, power, sewer, excavation, and building permits. Now, I know we're not talking about excavation and building permits right now. We're talking about utilities, but every single property needs water, power, and sewer. Okay. So once you find the property that you're considering building on, right, it's a very simple process. What is my water? Where am I going to get it? So it's very simple. Either there's a water lateral or a water main to the property. Perfect. How much is it going to cost for for me to pay the water district, my connection fee to that water line, and what's it going to cost for my excavator to trench that water line up to my home? Simple. Okay. But I don't have water to this site. I'm on a well. Okay, awesome. Is there an existing well, or do we have to drill a new well? And even if we have to drill a new well, any local licensed state well driller, we can access what are called the state well logs, and you can see what all the neighboring wells are, how deep they are, where they got to potable water, etc. And we can get a bid, usually within 48 hours. We can get a bid with what a well should cost on that property. And again, that goes into the budget during the feasibility study to make sure that this is going to be, financially feasible for the family. When it comes to sewer, again, there's either a sewer lateral at the street. Okay, perfect. How much is the health department going to charge me to connect to the sewer lateral? I got to put that in my budget. Okay, or there is no sewer lateral. We need a septic system. Okay, well then, if I need a septic system, what kind do I need? And for those of you that may or may not have heard, there's this thing called a perk test, right? Where you do have to pay a small bit of money. Excavator comes out, digs perk tests. A soils engineer looks at that soil and says, okay, based on your soil conditions, this is the type of septic that you're going to need. And then the builder would help you understand the cost associated with installing that septic. Perfect. And then we put that in the budget. And then when it comes to gas, again, there's either natural gas at the street, or we want to get a hold of a local propane company to actually set a tank on the property. And when it comes to electricity, it's the same thing. There's generally always power around. It's just a matter of how close. And on small acreage lot or city lots, it's generally not a big deal. There's a transformer at the neighbor's property, and your local PUD will give us a bid, if you will, on what it will cost to bring power up to serve your new home. Okay. Sometimes power can be overhead. Generally speaking, it is usually always underground. And again, during your 30-day feasibility study, we need to get these questions answered to make sure that this lot and this home that you want to build, right down to your tile selection in your master shower, everything is fitting within your budget.
All right, so we have it all in the budget. We know what we need to do. Now, who actually manages or oversees this process of adding utilities to the lot?
So that would be a great question of your builder. So depending upon what builder you're using, you would absolutely want to say, okay, so based on my contract, who's responsible? Here at Adair Homes, we like to take care of all of that on behalf of the consumer. So technically here in some regions at Adair Homes, we do what's called full site services, where we manage everything for the client. There are other regions and other areas that we serve where we have an option for those customers that want us to manage these types of things. So that's where I think it's very important, even if you're doing business with Adair, I think it's very important that you come in and you talk to your local Adair office to see how Adair will manage these things for you and what that will look like. Or if you're not using Adair Homes as your builder, please, talk directly with your builder and get clear on who's responsible for what during construction.
All right, let's talk about existing infrastructure. So, if there is something like a mobile home already on the property, what does that mean for customers? Can it be demolished or rolled into the cost of the construction loan? What does that look like?
Well, I'll tell you, this is where you get some of these hidden gems. And like I said, I've been doing this for many years, and I've seen this movie before. Is where customers can't find a vacant piece of property that they like within their budget. Can't find it. It's not out there. I've been looking for 4 months, and quite frankly, Carrie, I'm getting frustrated. Right. So let's talk about existing structures for a second. What if we told our realtor, remember, who's very good at finding land and works very closely with Adair Homes, what if we said, hey, listen, do me a favor. I want you to find the oldest dilapidated manufactured home you can possibly find. And you're thinking, why? That sounds terrible. Okay. Well, there are horrifically dilapidated, old manufactured homes on gorgeous property. Fair enough? Okay. And a manufactured home, the power is already there. The well's already in, for example. The sewer or septic is existing. The driveway is already there. Now, you may want to put a fresh coat of gravel on it or pave it. However, the driveway is already there. And so what that means, Carrie, is that if I'm able to find a piece of property with a very dilapidated older infrastructure on it, we could make an offer on the property. We could come in, and in some instances, you can actually sell the manufactured home. Adair Homes has contacts with manufactured home brokers, and we could actually look at the make and model. So manufactured homes have titles, right? Not deeds. So think of a title to a car, right? Based on the year, make, model, and miles of your car, this is what it's worth. Same thing with the manufactured home. Based on its year, make, and model and average miles, quote unquote, or condition, there's kind of a blue book value for manufactured housing. So John Abraham or one of the great locals can actually buy that home from you, right? And then your site development costs, instead of being 50, 70, or 80,000, depending, they might be, they could be all the way down to 25,000 because all those utilities are existing. So again, do not disregard any kind of old existing infrastructure, especially manufactured homes and things of that nature, when looking to build a nice new home.
Yeah, if you find one of those, it might just be a gold mine. So
It might
definitely
be.
keep an eye out. So we did already talk about this a little bit, but instead of what it is and why it's important, which I believe you already mentioned, how about, is there anything specific that customers should be looking for when they're shopping for land, or anything they should be trying to avoid?
Well, here's the thing: is that we generally at Adair, right? we don't want our customers to overthink it. So I would say that the first thing to do, is to meet with your local Adair Homes office. Why? Because Carrie, I have my total budget that I want to keep this thing within, right? Let's just say it's 500,000 or 700,000, right? That's my family and I's total budget. Great. Well, how much do I have to spend on land? Oh, I didn't think about that. Well, how much does the home cost? Exactly. So if you come in and you talk to your local Adair Homes office or whatever builder you choose to do business with, right? I think that's your first step to get very clear on how much of my total budget do I have to allocate towards property. Okay, awesome. Now that I have that number, now I can go out into the world, onto the internet or with my realtor, and I have a very good idea of what I need to spend on land. Okay. Two comments to fully answer your question. Number one is, if your total budget is 170,000 for land, okay, don't be shy at looking for land at 180 or 190,000. Why? Because you can offer 170 and the seller might take it, right? There is a negotiation. And my only other comment on that is, again, going back to what we said previously, was topography. So if my wife and I were out looking at property, I wouldn't flood your mind with, oh, do I need a well? Do I need a septic? Is there sewer connections? Just I would look at topography, because I think that topography is the number one thing that drives construction costs. And what I mean by that is, the flatter the property, right? Generally speaking, the less expensive it is to build. But if you and I pull up to this beautiful piece of property with these huge views and you're staring down a hillside, that's okay. But just know that we got to do suspended garage floors and huge retaining walls and big daylight basements to be able to accommodate that lot. Now, I'm exaggerating, but I'm just exaggerating to make the point. So topography is the number one thing to look at from a cost driving perspective. So
I just know I'm going to choose that lot that's covered in trees and it just goes right off a cliff.
well, which is, it could be fine, and I don't want to scare anybody off, right? It's just, if we get past that front building setback in your example, and we're able to get the garage up there on that flat, and then we're able to kind of gently step the rest of the home kind of down the hillside, that's okay. But if the entire build site is just big steep slope, then okay, we'll just, you and your builder will have to have conversations around budget.
We're all ready with the engineers on site.
Amen.
All right. So moving into finance, you did talk a little bit about what to think about with total project cost when shopping for land. Really expensive land might have an impact on how much you can spend on your home, that sort of thing. But how does one finance the land for a new home project? Is it a separate loan and payment from the home, or can it all be rolled into one?
Well, there are a few different lending options, but I will say, by a long shot, for those of us that do not have land and are looking to build, we would do what's called a construction loan, right? So a construction loan is a loan by which it pays for the property, it funds the site development of your new property, and it funds the build of your new home, right down to the last shrub planted in the front yard. So one simple loan takes care of essentially everything associated with building a new home. That is by far the most popular option. There are other options out there that we can get into, such as land loans and things of that nature, but that's where you start spiraling off on wanting to buy land, but I'm not ready to build yet, etc. But all that to say, Carrie, one simple construction loan does it all.
All right. And we do have an in-house team if anybody wants to see what they qualify for. And I believe we're running a pretty fun promotion right now. Jay, do you want to take a minute just to touch on that?
Well, it depends on when this video is going live here, but yes, I will say based on when this video was recorded, please look at the recording date, right? Adair Homes, we are offering rates as good as 4.875%. So that is unbelievable in our current rate market here in October of 2023 of pushing 8% or more. Again, you heard me correctly. We have rates as good as 4.875%.
Yep, it is limited time. So head on over to our site and you can learn more about that there.
Yep.
So it's that time of the episode where if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get them answered for you. Just a quick recap. Land selection is a very important part of the building process. After all, it's where you're going to be living. Jay, if you wanted people to remember one key takeaway from this lesson, what would it be?
Go visit your local Adair Homes office.
It's a good one.
Get all your questions answered.
All right. So the next session in our educational series is a fun one because who doesn't love to talk about designing their home? You can join us for that on Wednesday, October 25th at 1 p.m. And just a fun side note, all these land pictures you're seeing today are from actual Adair customers' home sites. Every year we run a views contest on social media where people can submit the view from their Adair home. So just a fun little extra we had on this episode. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope you found the information useful. If you still have questions, you can head to our website, www.adairhomes.com, and interact with us via live chat. We will see you next time on Adair Live. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jay.